Hi guys, welcome back to the Roth Living channel. Today we're making the glorious and best food on earth, a pie. Okay, so the keys to a great and beautiful pie: making the pie crust, 2, the filling, 3, the assembly and the baking. So what I'm going to be showing you guys today is how to get that beautiful flaky tender pie crust that everyone loves, and how to bake it correctly in your Wolf convection oven to be able to get that beautifully baked solid crust that doesn't get soggy and doesn't overcook on top. Okay, so first things first, let's make the dough. Okay, we have got a bowl of flour here, 3½ cups flour, 2 tablespoons of sugar, and 1½ teaspoons of kosher salt. Very simple recipe, very simple ingredients. The key to the pie dough is in the process, okay? So I like to do it all by hand and by feel. This, for me, helps me to really be able to evaluate and tell if everything is completely incorporated evenly, and to make sure that I don't over-incorporate it. And when you're making a pie crust, one of the essential tips that I have is not to overwork your butter. So a lot of people make their pie crusts in a food processor, and if you have that and that works for you, that's absolutely great. For me, my favorite way is with a pair of really clean hands and a bowl, and then I'm just going to go ahead and work it in myself. So as you can see what I'm doing here, just kind of tossing the butter so everything gets distributed, and then I'm gonna start smushing, for lack of a better term, okay? You're gonna smush the butter and the flour together. You want to use very cold butter because the cold butter is what is going to help you create those flaky layers in a pie crust. When you overwork your butter and it dissolves completely into your flour, then when you put it in the oven, you're not going to get the moisture release that you need to get those flaky layers. So here you can just watch, all I'm doing is I'm smushing it all together. It takes a bit of time because again, your butter is very cold, but as you do, you're looking for the texture. I almost want to say you still want to have pea-sized or larger pieces of butter left. You hear the phrase coarse meal a lot. I don't think anyone really knows what that means. And I think a better visualization is if you know you want to have chunks of butter within your flour mixture, because once those chunks of butter go into the oven, what happens is it hits that hot interior and the butter evaporates, or the moisture evaporates in the butter, and as it evaporates, it creates those pockets of steam, which gives us flaky layers. So I'm gonna keep working this butter into the flour, and then after we've got this done, I'll show you how we add the liquid to get the final dough to come together. Okay, this looks pretty well incorporated. It feels really good between my fingers. It's looking, as you can see, really clumpy, but when I grab some of it and squish it together, we're starting to get it to hold. And that's kind of what I'm going for. So the next step is gonna be adding the liquid. This is where things can go wrong a lot for people when they make pie crust, okay? We've done a good job. We've cubed up our butter, added it in while it was really cold so that it holds its shape. We've mixed it in, but not over mixed it in. Now we're gonna add the liquid. Now, when you add liquid to flour, you're gonna create, and work it, you're gonna create gluten. And gluten is tough. Gluten is gonna create protein structures that hold together, which is good when you're making bread, but not so good when you want a flaky and light pie crust. So what you're going for here is creating as little gluten as possible, but making sure that we add and work this dough enough that it's going to hold together, okay? So now that we've got the butter completely combined, I'm going to teach you another little tip and trick that I like to do. Here, I've got a little mixture, and here I've got water. Before I add water, I'm gonna add about 1/4 cup of vodka, okay? So this is important. People sometimes think I'm just trying to booze up the crust. This is not going to give it any sort of alcohol because it's gonna bake out in the oven. But what the vodka does that water cannot is it allows me to start adding moisture to the dough, combining it so that we're gonna get things to start holding together, but alcohol does not form gluten. So this is kind of a little trick in preventing too much gluten formation. So we add the vodka. I'm just kind of combining everything so that it's equally distributed throughout this mixture. And then we're going to start adding a few tablespoons of water, ice cold water, until we get the texture of dough that we're looking for, okay? So here, this is already starting to stick together more. And as you can see, when I'm making pie crust, if you're not making a bit of a mess, then what are you even doing? Wear something white, because then you'll never know if the flour hits you or not. All right, so this looks good, and then slowly I'm gonna start adding a few drops of water at a time. You do not want to add too much water, because that's when you're gonna get a dough that isn't light and flaky. That was about 1 tablespoon of water, mixing it together, and you wanna work quick enough that your butter doesn't melt, okay? So I'm just gonna continue doing this until it reaches the proper consistency and everything is holding together. I might actually dump it out onto my work surface. It'll make it a little bit easier at this point. And then I'm going to take the mixture, wrap it in plastic, and stick it in the fridge for at least 2 hours, because you don't wanna add too much water, as we've discussed. And so you're gonna feel like your dough isn't fully hydrated and then it's dry. As it sits in your fridge, that moisture and flour are going to combine. The flour is gonna become completely hydrated, so that by the time it comes out of the fridge, it's hydrated without being overly wet. Okay, the dough looks beautiful. This is enough for 1 double crust pie or 2 single crust pies. So we're going to go ahead and split this in half, just like that. And I don't know if you guys can see, but there's pockets, large chunks of butter, and you can actually see layers that are going to create that flakiness. So that's what we're going for. I want to stop now before it gets overworked. Wrap this in some plastic, stick it in my Sub-Zero, and we'll come back in 2 hours and I'll show you how we roll it out and assemble the rest of our pie. Okay, we're back and it's 2 hours later. I've got the pie crust. It's been chilling and I pulled it out. It's just gonna sit for a couple minutes on the counter to soften up. It'll be a little easier to roll out. And in the meantime, we're going to make the filling. So we are making a blackberry lemon pie. And so we have already got about 6 cups of fresh blackberries in this bowl. I've already zested a whole lemon and I'm going to add the juice from half a lemon. So we're just gonna add, and this lemon juice, what it does is it helps to bring out the berry flavor, so it's just a little bit more blackberry-y, and it's also gonna give it a little bit of a tang, which is nice. And then we are going to add sugar. Now, this is one of those things where some people like it sweeter, some people like it less sweet. I tend to lean on the side of a little less sweet. So I've got about a cup of sugar there, and I'm starting with adding about half a cup, and then I'll taste my blackberries to see how sweet they are, and I'll probably max add another 1/4 cup, but they might just be sweet as is. I tend to lean on the side of desserts that are not too sweet, and I just really want the flavor of the blackberries to kind of shine through here. Okay, so I'm just tossing them all together, making sure they're all coated, and this is gonna help to start to bring out the juices of the berries. You'll start to see all of those juices kind of seep out, and that's what we want. We're gonna let these marinate while we roll out our crust, and then it will be ready to fill. So we've got those all stirred together. I'm gonna go ahead and taste 1 blackberry. And these are not super sweet blackberries, so we're gonna add a little bit more here. Probably about 2 tablespoons is all I'm gonna add. And then we're gonna again toss them together, and then we are going to add some cornstarch, which I'm using as my thickening agent. People have a lot of different opinions here. A lot of people use flour, a lot of people use tapioca pearls. I just like good old cornstarch, and I don't add too much. This is another one of those ingredients I tend to lean on the less is more, okay? So I'm just gonna add about 2 teaspoons, When I've got something like berries, I do add a little bit more cornstarch because they are so juicy. When I'm doing a fruit that gives off less juice, I would use a little less cornstarch. We're gonna add just 1 more teaspoon, and that is gonna be perfect, okay? Toss one more time, and now we just put this aside and let it sit while we roll out our crust, okay? Looks beautiful. We'll put this aside. All right, so now I've got my crust here, and you'll notice I just have one crust. I'm going to show you one of my favorite little tricks to stretching your pie dough. And by stretching, I mean helping it create more than one pie. So what I'm doing today is I'm gonna show you a galette pie. So we're kind of mixing the two. A galette is a free-formed pie. You usually bake it on a 9x13 or a sheet pan, but we are going to make a galette in a pie dish. So this is kind of a cool dish, a cool way to get your pie dough to go a little bit further. And so we're first just gonna roll out the dough, and then we're gonna put it in the galette. You wanna roll it out extra wide to make sure that it's large enough to come up and form the top crust as well. So I'm now just gonna start rolling this out. Okay, the dough has been rolled out, and now I'm just kind of gently lifting it off the counter. And this is one of my other little tricks, is I rolled it directly on a sheet of plastic wrap. And we're gonna put it now directly face down in the pie dish, and we can just peel off that plastic wrap. So that's kind of a nice little trick you can use when transferring your pie dough, because I know that stresses a lot of people out. All right, so pie dough is good and in the dish. And now we're just gonna make sure that it's centered. And this is going to go back in the fridge to kind of firm up now. And then we will pull it back out in about 20 minutes once it's firmed up, fill it with the filling, and then we're gonna go ahead and bake it. But while this is chilling in the fridge, we're gonna go ahead and start preheating our oven. So to preheat, we are going to use the Wolf dual fuel range. So using the electric ovens, we are going to turn the oven onto the convection bake, and that is the black side. So you're gonna turn it just to the black where it says bake, and that means convection bake. It is set at 375 degrees automatically, and that's where I want to leave it. So that's all you have to do. Walk away, it's gonna start preheating, and when it's ready, we will be able to come back and put our pie in. Okay, the moment of assembling the pie has come. This has chilled in the fridge for about 30 minutes, so it's kind of solidified again. And I don't know if you guys can see, but we've got big chunks of butter throughout the dough, and that is what you wanna see in your crust, because that is gonna ensure flaky, delicious crust, okay? So now a few extra steps I like to take in ensuring that we keep a really nice crusty bottom instead of having a soggy bottom, because nobody likes that in a pie, okay? So I am going to do an egg wash. It's just one egg that I've whisked up with a little bit of water, and I'm just gonna go ahead and use a pastry brush to spread this around. This is gonna act almost like a glue, and it's gonna seal that bottom crust to help prevent any extra leakage, okay? So just a nice, really thin layer, sealing it in, but not gonna create some sort of scrambled egg situation, okay? And then I use this little mixture I'm gonna call pie dust. It's an equal mixture of flour and sugar, and I sprinkle this over the egg mixture, and this again helps to ensure that we don't get that sort of soggy, soupy bottom part of the pie, okay? So sprinkle this evenly across, and then we can finally add our filling. So remember these blackberries we mixed together, they've been sitting, and now you can kind of see how juicy they've gotten. They look really good. We're gonna go ahead and just pour the whole mixture right into the crust. And then, now, this is kind of the cool part of this dish. Again, instead of doing a top pie crust, which you can do is great, but I tend to like the ratio of filling to crust when we just go ahead and create a pie galette, okay? So I'm just folding in all the edges, and then it's freeform. Rustic is beautiful, it doesn't have to be perfect, okay? So just like this, and I kind of hold it together. Now since the dough was in the fridge, it's a little bit stiffer, so you just need to hold it in, and you can see it's gonna start holding, and we're gonna finish off with another egg wash over the top. This is gonna help to get a beautiful, even golden brown crust, and gonna help seal the crust together. And then the other thing it's gonna do is it's gonna act as a glue for us to sprinkle a raw sugar over the top, which is gonna give us this glorious, crunchy, sweet exterior all over the pie. So that's what I've got here, just a little sprinkle over the top. You could use a fine sugar as well, it's just gonna dissolve, but with using this raw turbinado sugar, we're gonna get that really nice crunch even after it's baked. Okay, that is our pie galette. Now it's gonna go in the oven that we have preheated, and I like to cook this on a sheet pan in the oven just to prevent any bubbling over of the juices, because that can caramelize onto the bottom of your oven. Ain't nobody got time to clean that up. So, pie in, we're gonna work quickly. Close it up, and it is again set at 375. The convection bake mode, the reason I use that for pies and the reason it's so good, because it is going to use most of the heating element from the bottom, and then we're gonna add in some convection fans, some heat from the back. What the convection does is it creates this environment that cooks hotter and faster. In the bake mode, heat coming from the bottom is gonna ensure that we cook that bottom crust first before the top crust gets too browned, because again, we're preventing that soggy bottom. So quick cooking on the bottom, and that convection helps to speed up that cooking as well. So the convection bake mode, fabulous mode for pies, but really just for pies, okay? So it's gonna take about 45 minutes to an hour. I'll come check on it. I just go until I see the juices of the pie filling bubbling up. That kind of means that it's fully cooked, and I like the goldenness of the outside crust, okay? So I'll see you guys back here when the pie is done, and we'll pull it out and see how it is finished. Okay, the time has come. It smells like buttery berry heaven in this house, which means the pie is done. It is looking fabulous. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull it out so you guys can see. Oh yeah, look at that. That is one perfect pie galette right there. So now comes the hardest part about baking a pie. We now have to wait at least an hour to let all those juices settle back down and congeal, so that when we slice this baby, we get a perfect slice instead of just fruit juice all over the plate. So that is our perfect pie baked in the Wolf Dual Fuel on convection bake. I can't wait to dig into this in a few hours.